When you take desperate measures, you are always plagued by doubts. What could I have done to avoid this situation? What actions could I have taken to avoid being here? I was pretty sure there was nothing I could have done. I had few options. How do you convince an adult that their actions will destroy everything they hold so dear? You can't force them to do anything. You can only watch helplessly and deal with the consequences. That is exactly the position I found myself in. My loving wife decided that this would make us stronger, demonstrate our love for each other, how strong it is, and what we mean to each other. I, on the other hand, felt it demonstrated how weak her love for me was, how selfish and spoiled she was. I am an ordinary person living an ordinary life. I'm not a strong, gentle, romantic hero. I have flaws like everyone else. I don't pay enough attention to anyone but myself. I work too much. I sometimes get angry when I shouldn't. I don't do it intentionally. It just happens. I'm human. Life is like that. Work and events get in the way. I was married to Amanda for 19 years. We were both ready for more when we found the time. We were distracted by other things. Football, a good book, a TV show, or maybe the girls wanted something to keep us busy. Suddenly, she wasn't happy. "Corwin, how long has it been since you went on a date?" she asked one day. "Last Friday I took you to that Italian restaurant you've been wanting to go to for a long time," I replied. "We went to a movie and your mom kept the girls overnight, remember?" "I don't mean with me," she said. "How long has it been since you've dated anyone else?" "Jesus, Amanda, are you accusing me of something?" I asked. "No, no, honey. It's not that at all. I was just wondering if you remember the name of the last girl you dated besides me?" "Yes, I remember," I said. "Her name was Donna, and it was about 2 weeks after I met you. I think you might remember her too. We had a big fight about that date." "Did you ever miss her?" she asked. "God, no." I laughed. I remember how awful it was. Not that date, it was pretty good, but the whole dating thing. Working up the courage to ask a girl out, worrying about being turned down, the awkward first conversations. It was traumatizing as hell. "But wasn't it exciting and mysterious?" she asked. "More like absolutely terrifying," I replied. "What made you think of that, Amanda?" "I was just wondering if you've ever felt the urge to go on a date with someone else," she said. "No, I've never felt that way," I answered her. "I guess everyone has fantasies, but no. I remember you getting really mad when I went on a date with Donna and said you wanted us to be exclusive. I decided that's exactly what I wanted too. If I felt differently, I wouldn't have asked you to marry me. I'd just date women. That's what it means to be married. You don't go out with people other than your spouse." She left it at that, and for a month I heard no more nonsense. It was Friday night. "Corwin, I saw the way Sebra was looking at you tonight. She wanted you to ask her to dance." Sebra is a friend of ours where Amanda works. We've known her forever. We met up with her and Angela, another friend from work, for dinner, and then went to the club. Sybra is a very nice and very pretty woman, about 5 years younger than us. "Well, that's very flattering, but I only want to dance with you," I told her. "I won't be jealous if you ask her out," she said. "That's nice, but then you have no reason to be jealous because I'm not going to ask her out," I said. "Would you be jealous if I danced with another man?" she asked. "I think your brother would be fine with it," I said. It was a joke, but she didn't laugh. "I never cared if you danced with guys who asked me politely and kept their hands where they belonged. Was there anyone there you wanted to dance with? I don't remember anyone asking me out." "No, I was just curious," she said. I had no idea where this was going, but I didn't like it. I didn't think I could sleep, so I got up and went to my room. I was playing a video game and saw her come to the door and watch me for a minute. I didn't look at her and she went back to bed. I waited until she was asleep and joined her. Things were quiet for 2 months until we went to Angela's promotion party. It was at the White Rhino, and there was a good band playing. We were all sitting in a big round booth, and Amanda was talking to Sebra. "Corwin, Sebra wants to dance," Amanda said. "Could you be a gentleman and dance with her?" What the hell? I remembered the conversation from 2 months ago. Now I was in a very awkward position. Mora was a good friend of mine, and I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but I definitely didn't want to dance with her. That lush body pressed against mine didn't bode well, but I didn't know how to gracefully get out of the situation. I liked to dance, but I didn't know how to do it. Mora was like a big cat, graceful and smooth, and I looked clumsy. There was no good way out, so I stood up. I think they're playing our song. Thanks for dancing with me, Corwin, she said. Amanda said you wouldn't mind that you like to dance. I haven't danced since I broke up with Bruce. Well, you're a very good dancer, I said. Actually, I don't mind dancing with you, Mora. I like you a lot. Hell, I love you. You're the sweetest girl I know, but you're really hot, and that's not a good idea for me. She giggled. You're safe with me, Corwin. I love you too. If you weren't married, I'd be thrilled for you, but Amanda is my best friend. Let's just enjoy this dance, okay? When we got back to the booth, Amanda wasn't there. I looked around and noticed her black and white dress. She was on the floor with some young guy with Nordic looks. She was laughing in his face, and his hands were much lower than they should have been. She noticed me standing there looking for her. She smiled and waved at me. I was angry, very angry, in fact. She'd sent me off with Mora to dance with that asshole. I threw a couple of 20s on the table and started to stalk toward the exit. Zebra watched me halfway to the door and then ran after me. She caught up with me when I was halfway to the car. Corwin, stop! Where are you going? She panted. We've been played, I told her. Amanda was talking about dating other people and asked me if I'd ever thought about it. That's what it was. She was testing the waters. She set it up by getting me to dance with you. It gave her an excuse to dance with Romeo. So what are you doing? She asked. You're just going to leave her here? That's exactly what I'm going to do, I said. Well, you can't leave me here, she grabbed my arm. I'm coming with you guys. I felt as fit as a fiddle. I'm sorry, Mora. I don't know what I was thinking. It's okay, Corwin. I don't like being played with any more than you do, she said. Take me to your house so I can get my car. We were almost home when my phone buzzed. I ignored it, and Zebra glared at me. Her phone rang, and she answered it. We're almost at your house, she said. She looked at me and muttered, Amanda. No, this wasn't my idea. I was driving with you guys, remember? My car was leaving, and I wasn't going to be idle. No, look, Amanda, I'm not a part of this. Don't put me in that position. We've been friends for a long time, girl, but if you mess with me, you'll regret it. She ended the conversation. She wants you to come back and get her, she said. Well, I want a wife who doesn't play stupid games, I sighed. Where did that shit come from, Moore? Marcy, from work, I think, she said. She's always talking about how she and Herb have an open marriage, and how great it is, and how it's made their lives so much better and their marriage so much stronger. It's a load of crap. He and Herb barely talk and spend all their time entertaining all their friends. He's been hitting on me for as long as I've known them, the creep. She's been filling our ears with this crap for 2 years now. I didn't think Amanda was stupid enough to buy into it, but I guess I was wrong. I think she's trying to set us up, Corwin. She knows that I love you and that I've always liked you. I almost choked. Thank you, Mora. This is really awkward. I mean, I think you're gorgeous, but I'm a one-woman kind of guy, and I'm not good at sharing my toys. I'm sorry she dragged you into this. Why should you be sorry? She asked. You had nothing to do with it. I danced with the man of my dreams, and I don't regret it one bit. Corwin, will you let me know what happened? I assured her that I would, and she got in her car and drove off. I went into the house, thought for a while, and then took my stuff out of the master bath and put it in the one in the guest room. I went back and got my stuff for work the next day and put it in the same place. I locked the door and went to bed. For some reason, maybe the drink, I fell asleep right away. I was half awake when the door slammed downstairs and footsteps were heard in the hallway. The handle of the bedroom door jerked a few times. Someone knocked on the door. Corwin, what the hell is going on? I heard Amanda whisper. She probably didn't want to wake the girls who were sleeping in the hallway. She tapped and whispered for another 10 minutes, and I heard her footsteps retreating down the hallway to our bedroom. Or rather, it was our bedroom. Now I had no idea what it was. I found that I hated the bed in the guest bedroom. How many people have even tried to sleep on a guest bedroom bed? I tried to get up and slip out the door before she woke up. Yes, it was a cowardly plan, but who cared? I just didn't want to see her. But it didn't work. She came down the stairs as I was stacking some papers in my briefcase. What's the matter with you, Corwin? She hissed. She was all pissed off. I think you should ask that question to yourself, I said. What does that mean? She said loudly. You ditched me at the club last night, locked yourself in the spare bedroom, and are trying to sneak out of the house an hour before you have to go to work. Now you think there's something wrong with me? Yeah, that's exactly what I think, I said. I picked up my briefcase. Everything I've done is a reaction to what you've done. I don't even want to look at you right now. You have no idea how close you are to making me permanently angry with you. Pull yourself together, check all your points, and be ready to talk about it when I get home. I'll pick up the girls and take them to Mom's. We'll work it out. Her face went pale. I have no idea what you're talking about. What if I have something planned for tonight? That's up to you, I told her. If you're interested in fixing what's broken in this house, you'll be ready and cut the crap. If you're fine with it, do whatever the hell you want. Oh yeah, one more thing. Move your shit to the spare bedroom. I like my bed. You're not welcome in the same bed as me. She pouted like a toad, but I wasn't going to listen to her. I just left her there and went to work. I picked the girls up from school, and they happily went to Grandma's for the evening. I told my mom that Amanda and I were having problems and needed some alone time. She just hugged me and told me she loved me. I was grateful that I didn't have to answer a bunch of questions. When I got home, Amanda was already there. She had baked cookies, and there was a plate of them and a cup of coffee waiting for me. She got up and snuggled up to me for a long time before she kissed my cheek and sat me down next to her on the couch. I got myself a cookie. They were delicious, oatmeal with chocolate chips and M&Ms. Good, I said. She smiled, and I thought we were off to a good start. I didn't want to ruin all that friendliness. Amanda, that was some nasty shit you pulled last night, I told her. It's bad enough that you did that to me, but you dragged Maura into it. It was humiliating for both of us. It was disrespectful to me and to that nice girl who is supposed to be your friend. She met my gaze with difficulty. I'm sorry, Corwin, she said. I shouldn't have done that, okay? I was just trying to talk to you and you just brushed me off. I thought that maybe this would be a way for you to see some possibilities. Opportunities for what? I asked. What exactly are you doing and thinking about, Amanda? Just ask me, tell me, or whatever. You're playing games, and it pisses me off. She hesitated for a minute, then just mouthed it. I just thought we could try dating other people. Well, there's a bit of a problem with that, I told her. Actually, there are several problems. The first is that we're both married. Other married people do it too, she said. It's not like it used to be. A lot of people have open marriages, and they love each other more than ever. It only makes them love each other more. How do you know that? I asked. Everyone knows about it, she replied. The girls at work talk about it all the time. Are these girls married? I asked. Yes, that's how I know about it. Give me a name, I said. Marcy, she said. Marcy and Herb have an open marriage, and their marriage is stronger than ever. How do you know? I asked. She told me, she replied. Well, that certainly means it's true. How do you know she's not lying? I have an idea, I told her. Let's see. Google knows everything. Let's look at all these loving, open marriages. She looked a little shocked, but still came over and sat next to me while I fired up my laptop. I opened my browser and typed in, How many people live in open marriages? I had no idea what we would find, but I wanted to know it now. I clicked on the first link. According to the survey we read, less than 1% of Americans are in open marriages. We checked a few more links and the result was the same, less than 1%. I guess she expected something different. That's still a lot of people, she said. That's 3 million at least. That's wrong, I said. I doubt very many kids are in marriages, open or otherwise. Okay, let's try it this way, I suggested. I typed in, how many Americans expect their partners to be faithful? We clicked on the link and found that it was over 95%. And what do you think that means? I asked. Asked me. I guess most people aren't very open, she said. I thought there would be more people with alternative lifestyles. I hear about it all the time. I wonder how many of these open marriages end in divorce. Would you like to know? I asked. I don't think she wanted to. I did, however, and I wanted her to know. I typed into a search engine, how many open marriages end in divorce? Turns out 92% of open marriages end in divorce in 5 years or less. Okay, I said. Let's see. Less than 1% of Americans are in an open marriage. That means that out of 1 million people, less than 10,000 are in open marriages. 92% of open marriages end in divorce. That means that out of 10,000 people, 800 of them don't divorce for 5 years. That's 800 people out of 1 million, Amanda. Do the math. If 92% of 1% fail, how many successful open marriages are there in the world? What are the odds that ours will be one of the ones that succeed? Her voice was quiet. Not very good, she said. The few that succeed are the ones where both parties are on board, I told her. Look at the screen. 100% of the ones where one side is coerced fail. Our case will be one of those because I'm certainly not doing it voluntarily. Can you imagine the effects of resentment, rivalry, jealousy, insecurity, betrayal, and insecurity if I let it happen? The only possible reason I could do something so absurdly painful is if I was desperate to keep you. I'm not that desperate. I'm attracted to other women. One of them told me so last night. If I were some pathetic loser who can't find a date, or a sick freak who enjoys watching his wife have fun with other men, maybe I'd be interested in playing your game. I'm not that kind of man, Amanda. I'd rather you shoot me in the head than break my heart. I don't think you can believe everything you see on the internet, she said weakly. No, you're probably right, I said. I think most of it is total bullshit. Especially the part that says things are different now. A lot of people have open marriages. That's the part you shouldn't believe. You think you can believe everything that whore Marcy tells you? How many times has she been divorced? What about her husband? How many times has he been divorced? I don't know about him, she said. What about her? I asked. 4 times, she answered quietly. So you're listening to marriage advice from a 4-time loser? I asked incredulously. I'm not, she protested. She and Herb have a very strong marriage. I don't know what happened the other times. Maybe she married assholes. Or maybe she is an asshole, I said. I was disgusted by all this shit. I asked Maura where all this shit came from. She said Marcy talks about it all the time. I also found out that Marcy and Herb hardly talk to each other and spend all their time partying with their friends. How do you think this is going to end, Amanda? What exactly do you think you're doing? Well, don't you think our life lately has gotten a bit stale? She asked. No, it doesn't seem that way, I told her. I've been perfectly happy. It got weird because you want to play silly games. Wait a minute, was that Marcy's idea too? From the look on her face, I realized it was. Jesus Christ, I exploded. It was her idea. It's just unbelievable. We have a very strong marriage. This could be so good for us and so exciting, she said. We could come home and tell each other about our experiences and it would be so cool. Don't you have fantasies of me being with another man and then coming home and... A lot of men have that fantasy. It's one of the top 10 male fantasies. Fantasies? I exploded. More like a nightmare. How do you know a lot of men have that fantasy? Do you want to Google it? I don't know who's into that shit, but just thinking about it gives me the creeps. If you do this, any of it, we're screwed, Amanda. She looked shocked. What do you mean by, it's over between us? Do you mean you're going to divorce me? Is that all our marriage means to you? I thought you loved me more. I thought our marriage was strong and you were open to everything. Yeah, I thought it was strong too, I said. Apparently, it's not as strong as I thought it was. The fact that you're even talking crap like that tells me that our marriage doesn't mean a damn thing to you. What are you going to tell the girls? Mom and Dad are splitting up? Are you going to tell them why? We're not splitting up, she said. If we were splitting up, it would only be because their daddy doesn't love me enough to accept the fact that I love him enough to let him have another relationship. Guess again, I said. They would be told that their mother doesn't love their father enough to keep her marriage vows. She doesn't love them enough to make sure they have a good, loving home. Their mother wants to be a whore, and she doesn't care about the rest of them. We were both furious, and she quickly nailed the coffin lid shut. I want this, she said. It's going to happen, Corwin. You have to get used to it. You can either go on this journey with me, or you can sit at home and sulk like a child. That's where you're wrong, I told her. We're not going to survive this, Amanda. The first time you entertain some asshole, we'll be past it. I won't be sitting at home. I'll be talking to a lawyer. I'm going to give you a couple options. One, we can just forget the whole thing, and I'll talk to a lawyer in the morning. We'll get divorced as soon as possible. Two, you can make an appointment with a therapist in the morning to find out why you're freaking out. Right after that, you can make an appointment for us to see a marriage counselor. We'll try to fix this mess. I'll go to counseling too and work with you, but I don't have any hope at all. This is a big failure, Amanda. I've been anticipating it ever since you had those weird ideas. I think that slut Marcy was shoving some information at you, and you obviously swallowed it. You think all these good things are going to happen. All that will happen is that you will make everyone you say you love miserable. The girls, me and you, we're all going to suffer because you've somehow built that idea in your mind. Believe me, I'm not going to sit at home. And what are you going to do about it? Now she was teasing me. You won't be able to stop me. You don't own me, and I can do whatever I want. You're not going to divorce me. You have too much to lose. I'll get the girls in the house, and you'll pay alimony and child support. Think about it, Corwin. Don't do anything stupid. I love you. I'll never leave you. This could be so exciting for us. We'll experience all the thrills of the first time without all the risks and downsides. I'll come home or you'll come home, and we'll be there for each other. If you're not happy, we'll stop, and that's the end of it. She stood up, walked over to my chair, and tried to wrap her arms around me and kiss me. I pushed her hands away and stood up. Don't touch me, I told her. I need to think about this. I'll let you know what I decide. I lied. I didn't need to think about it at all. I just needed to gather my thoughts. She was probably right about everything she said about divorce. This whole system was screwed up 9 ways from Sunday. I needed to take a few steps. I left her there, went up to the bedroom, and locked the door. After sitting at the computer for 30 minutes and 10 on the phone, I came up with a plan to get the money. The problem was the girls. I checked. Georgia law, we lived in Atlanta, says kids over the age of 14 can choose who they live with. I bet on myself. Audra had the upper hand. She was Daddy's princess, and always had been. Olivia loved me, I knew that, but she also thought a lot of her mother. I knew there was no way Audra would go with Amanda, and I didn't think Olivia would want to be separated from her sister. I was betting that if I could get them to hear what their mother was planning, how she planned to use them as leverage to force me into this open marriage, they wouldn't want anything to do with her. Yes, it was cynical, and I hated every thought I had, but I wasn't the one changing the rules. Here's what it came down to. If Amanda had come to me before the wedding, told me she wanted to be faithful to each other for 19 years and then start having fun with other people, would I have married her? Not a chance in hell. I'd run out of there like a cat with its tail between its legs. She knew that, and would have done the same thing. Now she wanted to change the rules and force me to go along with them. She threatened me with what she would do if I didn't agree. If she came to me and told me she wanted to have fun and wanted a divorce, I would be in a lot of pain, but I would do the honorable thing. We would have split things up, agreed on custody, and that would have been the end of it. But not after this extortion. The conversation happened 2 nights later. Amanda didn't know the girls were eavesdropping from the stairwell. She started by apologizing. I wasn't buying it. So you've decided to see a therapist and start marriage counseling? I asked. There's nothing wrong with me, she snapped back. The problem is you. You plan to have fun with other men and I'm the problem? I asked. I'm not planning anything, she said. I don't have some big plan to go out and do that. I mean, going out with someone else. I don't even expect to do that. I just think we should have an option if it comes up. I have another idea, I told her. Just so you know, I have the option of cheating on you sometimes. Not every day, but I've had those chances a dozen times over the years. You know what kept me from doing it? What? She asked. I had a plan, I told her. I had a plan not to cheat. I went into each of these situations with a plan that I wasn't going to do it. That's what marriage is all about. Planning for a good marriage, planning not to have fun with other people. If you don't plan for success, you plan for failure. Isn't that what they say? It is what you plan to do. You plan to betray all the promises you made to everyone, me, your children, God, and everyone else. How do you think the girls will take it? You won't tell them a damn thing, she hissed. You know the mother always gets custody of the children. I'll take them away from you and you'll never see them again. I'll make sure something comes up every time you visit them. You'd better not say a word to them. She threw me a glance and walked off somewhere. A few faint sighs and muffled sobs came from the stairs. Amanda was making too much noise for me to hear. When I reached the stairs, the girls were gone. I went up to Audra's room, but it was empty. As I walked down the hallway to Olivia's room, I heard quiet voices inside. I knocked and Olivia asked what I needed. Can I come in? I asked. She opened the door. Come on in, Daddy, she said. We thought maybe it was Mom. They were both obviously crying. I sat down between them and hugged them both. I'm so sorry you had to hear that, I told them. I didn't think you'd believe me unless you heard it for yourself. It's okay, Dad, Olivia said. It's not your fault. It's her fault. I didn't believe you. Well, I didn't think you'd lie to us, but I thought maybe you misunderstood her. Now we know. How could she do this to you? How could she do that to us? I don't know, baby, I told her. I don't understand a damn thing. She's not thinking straight. She's been listening to a lot of bullshit, someone at work told her. She decided she was going to do it, that's all. I tried everything I could think of to talk her out of it. But she doesn't care. Do you think she's sick? Asked Audra. I have no idea what she's sick with, I said. I've been trying to talk her into seeing a therapist. You heard me. I've suggested she go to marriage counseling. She's just not interested. So what are we going to do? She asked. Nothing right now, I said. When she decides I've given up, she'll probably go on a date. When she does, we'll be ready. When she comes back, we'll be gone. I'll try to talk her out of it. I don't think she'll listen. Are you both with me, or do you want to stay with her? They looked at each other for a minute. No, Daddy, we're coming with you, Audra said. My heart jumped. 19 years ending in disappointment, but here was a reason I was going to be okay. I wouldn't regret a single minute as long as I had my children. It had been almost 2 months. It's been the strangest 2 months of my life. Amanda and I barely spoke. We were like roommates who didn't really like each other. She slept in the spare bedroom and I slept in what was our room. I tried to talk to her, to convince her of the madness she was up to. One evening, we were weeding the garden and I broached the subject. Amanda, do you feel like your plan is working? Is our marriage getting stronger? Is this what you thought would be so great? Is this what you've been dreaming of? She looked at me, and I saw the first hint of doubt in her eyes. It quickly turned to anger. If you weren't an asshole, things would be different, she snapped back. I don't want my wife planning to have fun with other people. She insists she's going to do it whether I like it or not. Am I the asshole here? Yes, you are, she practically shouted. You don't even think about how great this could be for both of us. It doesn't have to be like this. You can just let go of your stubborn male pride, and it'll be perfect. Perfect for who? I asked. Certainly not for me. This is as bad as it can get for me at all. You obviously don't care about me. I love you far more than you love me, she said bitterly. I love you enough to allow you your freedom, to let you explore your boundaries, and to keep your place in my heart. I don't consider that love, I told her. I consider it selfishness. I love you enough not to exercise my freedom. I love you enough not to have fun with other people, not to explore any boundaries. If you truly loved me, you would. When did you stop loving me, Amanda? No, I didn't stop, she cried. I love you more than ever. That's how I can let that happen. My love for you is stronger than you can imagine. So love is when you drive a stake through my heart. Is that love to you? I asked. That's not what I'm doing, she was furious now. I'm going to the club with Bill White from work Friday night, she said. Sebra's coming with us. Please, Corwin, come with us. Give it a try. I promise you won't be disappointed. It'll be the hottest thing we've ever done. I pretended to think for a moment. Okay, what the hell? You're going to do it anyway, so I guess I can come with you too. She was in the garden in a flash, wrapped her arms around me and pressed herself against my body. Corwin, she sobbed. God, thank you, honey. I was going crazy. I didn't think you'd even think about it. You won't regret it, baby, I promise. You'll never regret it. I was already regretting it, but the situation was unbearable. I couldn't go on like this. I wondered if Maura would help me. I decided to call her. As it turned out, she was mad as hell. She had no idea what was going on when Mandy suggested she go to the club. She didn't know Bill White would be there, and she certainly didn't know she was being set up to be with me. What a bitch, she said when I told her about it. I call her now and she's toast. Maura, do you trust me? I asked her. What the hell does that mean? She hissed. I trusted that bitch wife of yours too. Maura, calm down, I told her. I need your help. I know you're upset, but I really need you to help me. This is the dividing line. I'm walking away from it. We're getting divorced as soon as possible. I'm ready, but I need your help. I'm going to play, and I need you to play with me. I could hear her breathing deeply into the tube. What are you up to? She asked. I'm going to pretend I don't care about any of this, I told her. I'm going to ask you to come home with me. All you have to do is pretend that's what you want to do. She laughed. How do I know this isn't some devious plan to get me into your house? I chuckled. It is, I told her. I need you to take the girls to my new place while I move our stuff out of the house. That brought out the evil side of her, and she agreed that her revenge could wait. I didn't know she had a vengeful side, but it had to work for me. That week was beautiful. Friday morning before I left for work, I tried again. Are you very sure about this, Amanda? There's still time, you can still cancel. Hasn't this week been great with just the two of us? Corwin, we've been through all of this already. If it turns out you don't like it, we can talk afterward, but I'm not changing my mind. She smiled at me. Yes, Corwin, the last week has been wonderful. I've really enjoyed it, and I love you. Tonight is going to be the best night ever. You'll see. Thanks for doing this with me. You're going to love it, Corwin, I know it. She, dancing, walked out of the bedroom. Did she know I'd like it? Right, I thought sourly. Let's get this day over with. When Sebra peeked into the house Friday night, she was simply stunned. Amanda was pretty, petite, and slender. Sebra was in a whole different league. She was tall. Now I realize you're trying to entertain me, she said. Well, yes, but not tonight, I said. It's all business. I'll have to wait. That's too bad, she said. Amanda only smiled. You two are getting an early start, I see. Leave it until after we dance and then get a room. I already have a room, I told her. How about you and Bill get a room? She grinned, grabbed her clutch, and off we went. Bill met us at the club. I don't think the evening started out the way he expected. I shook his hand and just crushed it. I did powerlifting for many years, and if you lift without straps, it gives you a pretty good grip. I saw him start to get weak in the knees, so I let him go. You could see he wanted to whimper and wipe his hand, but his macho image wouldn't let him. He was one of those handsome boys. Have you ever noticed that when men get close to what some women would call the ideal, the odds of them being barbers or Scientologists increase almost to infinity? Just look at Tom Cruise, I inquired of Bill. Say, Bill, are you a barber by any chance? I asked him. He snorted. Hell no, he said. He looked like he wanted to say something, but his arm hurt too much. Do you know who Ron Hubbard is? I asked him. Yes, how did you know? He asked. I was a Scientologist for 6 years. I shrugged. Just testing a theory, I said. C was ready to choke. I'd already mentioned my little theory to her, and she could burst into laughter at any moment. We both glanced over at Amanda, and she blushed furiously. Perhaps I had shared my personal theories with her too often. Let's find a stall, she said, and strode away with her back stiff as a poker, and Mr. Bill followed her. As soon as he was within 10 feet of us, Zebra burst into laughter. I took her hand and we followed them, wiping tears from our eyes. You're an evil man, Corwin, she sighed. Yeah, it's been a hell of a night, I told her. Get a grip on yourself more. Act like you're seducing me. And she was pretty good at it. Are you ready for the big show? I asked Zebra. I heard a noise, and Amanda and Mr. Bill slid back into the booth. Oh no, I said in my best Saturday Night Live show host manner. Look who's back. Zebra got it. Amanda did too. But Mr. Bill didn't notice anything. Don't do him any harm, Slughorn, Moore chuckled. Amanda swelled up like a puffer, and the smirk disappeared from her face. Moore and I are going to get out of here, I told them. And you, have fun. Amanda walked us to the door. Are you sure you're okay, Corwin? She asked. You were being a jerk back there. No, I'm not okay, I told her. Mandy, it's not too late. You've had your fun. Just get out of here right now with me. We'll go home and try to work things out. If you stay, it's going to be for a long time. No, Corwin, she said. This is going to be so great for us. Just go and enjoy the sea. It'll be amazing, you'll see. Just try not to be such a jerk, okay? She grabbed my hand. It's going to be so great, Corwin. You'll see. The sea is hot for you. You can tell me all about it when I get home. Aren't you going to spend the night with him? I asked. I figured with a stud like him, he'd be up all night. Well, I guess so. She hesitated a little. I thought I'd get home around midnight and then we'd do our thing, you know. Brighten up the time. Oh, yeah. I slapped myself on the forehead. I forgot. Well, I'll see you when you get here. If Maura and I are still, having fun, try to keep it down, okay? She looked at me and kissed me. I hope she liked it, because it was the last one. I walked out and got in the car. The sea was waiting. Are you sure you know what you're doing, Corwin? She asked. You've been married a long time. Yeah, I'm sure, I sighed. I expected you to be even more upset, she said. After a while, you just run out of steam, I said. I was upset for a long time. Now I'm just sick, tired and sick. I just want it to be over. Somehow I've lost the energy to be upset. I've cried gallons of tears and the time to cry is over. It's time to move on. Let's go get the girls. When we pulled up, the truck was already being loaded. The girls were carrying their clothes downstairs and packing them into large plastic tubs. There wasn't much furniture we were carrying. The bed from the main room, the girls' beds, their TVs and electronics, and the big screen we replaced 6 months ago with a bigger one. When the girls were done packing, C took them in her car, and they drove to the new place. It was as far away from the old one as you could get, and still in the same school district. The guys finished packing up, and I took one last look around. Everything looked empty and silent. The ghosts of 19 years was all that was left. I sighed, took off my wedding ring, and tossed it on the kitchen table along with my cell phone. The girls' phones were already there, and it was time to leave. I felt melancholy take over me. I left with a whimper. A few minor jabs at Amanda and Mr. Bill, and I was walking away from 19 years that had been pretty damn good. Oh well, stuff happens. I closed up, loaded the tools from the garage into the back of my truck, and drove off. The girls were excited about the new place. There was a pool in the backyard, and they couldn't wait to try it out the next day. "Do you like it, baby?" I asked Audra. "Yes," she replied. I had no idea what kind of yeet it was, but it sounded good. Sebra was there, and she still looked amazing, but if she had been Jennifer Lawrence in the flesh, I would have just gotten tired. Not that I preferred Jennifer Lawrence to Sebra, you understand, but you know what I mean. She sensed it, I think, and just gave me a dazzling smile, gave me a quick peck on the cheek and left, only the smell of her perfume reminding me that she was there. We got into bed, and surprisingly, I slept. Not very well, but I slept. The next morning I got up and made coffee, and a short time later the girls came in. We had Danish Kringle and chocolate milk for breakfast. They watched cartoons on TV until noon, and then two gorgeous little bundles of energy and bikinis were splashing around in the pool, and I sat in a chaise lounge and watched them. I wasn't really paying attention. I was wondering what Mandy was doing. She had to be freaking out by now. I was sure she was calling everyone she could remember, trying to find out what had happened. It wasn't going to be easy for her to find us. I didn't work. I sold the business and profited like a bandit. The girls were out of school. It was summer vacation. We weren't going anywhere except to the grocery store, and there we walked and took the bus. The truck was parked in the garage. I was sure the police were looking for us, but without the truck, they would have a problem. The only way to contact us was electronically. She flooded our inboxes with messages, texting the girls on IM every time they went on social media, sending tweets and Instagram posts. We read them, but didn't respond. Allowed her to find us the hard way. I knew she would sooner or later, but she needed to work and pay bills. I didn't make any payments, and if she didn't, she would fall behind quickly. We had a good amount of equity in the house, and I knew she wouldn't want to lose it. Apparently, she got desperate because one day, about 3 weeks later, a private investigator approached me at the grocery store. "Mr. Decker?" he asked. "Who wants to know?" said I. "Your wife hired me to find you," he said. "I'm going to tell her where you are. You need to call her." "If I see you around, I'll charge you with stalking," I told him. "Beat it, mutt." I wasn't going to call her. As it turned out, I didn't have to. The police arrived, and Mandy gave them the information that I had kidnapped the girls. They asked me to come down to the station and deal with it. When I refused, they arrested me and dragged me downtown. The girls went in another car, and when we got to the station, Amanda was already there. She tried to hug the girls, but they weren't interested. They pushed her away, and then a woman came and took her and Amanda away. They went to one room and I went to another. The cops started questioning me like they had a grudge against me. I identified myself. They already had my driver's license, and the only words that came out of my mouth were, "I intend to remain silent and want to speak to a lawyer." That silenced them. "He's hiring a lawyer," I heard one of them say. They gave me the phone, and I called John Trimble. He was there in 45 minutes. Moore was with him. We had it all planned out. It took about 3 hours to get everything sorted out. The girls said they were with me because they wanted to be, that there had been no kidnapping and that they didn't want to talk to their mother. John took it from there. He pointed out that there was no court order for custody. that Georgia law considered both parents equal claimants to custody, and that children over the age of 14 could choose the parent they wanted to live with. They had no choice but to let us go. C went with us, and Amanda walked behind us, begging the girls to talk to her. They got into Sebra's car and drove off, leaving the two of us alone in the parking lot. Amanda was crying like a bucket and looked just awful. She turned longing eyes to me and fell to her knees. Corwin, for God's sake, talk to me. Please, I'm begging you. I seem to remember begging you not to have fun with Mr. Bill, I said. You didn't listen. Why should I? Please, Corwin, don't treat me like this, she sobbed. I'm sorry, okay? Can't we just go somewhere and talk? Okay, let's talk, I said. Where do you want to go? Home, she pleaded. Can't we just go home? I don't want to go somewhere where I might be seen in this condition. We can go to my house, I told her. I'm not interested in going to yours. I don't know who you've been partying with there. She groaned slightly in horror but nodded her head. Okay, Corwin, suit yourself, she said. But it's your home, too. I wasn't going to argue with her. She wanted me to go with her, but I wasn't going to be stuck in a car with her. I called a cab and she followed me home. I knew the girls had been with Sebra and stayed the night at her place. They had known her all their lives and were very close. Amanda walked into the house and I brought her a cup of coffee. We sat down at the bar and the silence stretched awkwardly. The silence hadn't been uncomfortable between us since our third date, but it sure was now. What do you want, Corwin? She finally asked. Did I say I wanted something? I asked. I mean, what do you want me to do? She said. What do I need to do to get you to come home? What do you want me to do so I can see the girls? Hey, there's no way I can influence you to see the girls, I said. It was their choice. What did you tell them? She accused. You told them something. You turned them against me. I read about it. Are you sure Marcy didn't tell you that? I asked. She lowered her eyes. Apparently Marcy was the oracle of all wisdom. What do you want? She repeated. You know what the funny thing is? I asked. The funny thing is that I haven't said a word to them about you. The only thing I've told them is that I'm leaving you, and they need to decide who they want to live with. You want to know who told them, Amanda? You. You're the one who told them. What do you mean? She asked. I didn't say anything. When was I supposed to say something? Do you remember that night in the living room when you threatened me? I asked. I could see that she remembered. They were sitting on the stairs. They heard every word you said. Her face turned pale and she began to sob. I didn't mean it, she sobbed. I just... She couldn't continue. Well, they think you did, I said. Actually, I think so too. I think most people win. What can I do? Her plea was pathetic. Mine was pathetic too. With them? I have no idea, nor do I care, I said. You screwed it up. You fix it. What can I do to you? She asked. Well, you can file for divorce, I said. I don't want a divorce. I just want you to come home, she said. I am home, I told her. I don't live with you. I'm sorry, Corwin. This whole thing was a big mistake, she said. I shouldn't have made you do it. You didn't want it, and I should have just accepted it. I'm accepting it now. Why don't you just forgive me and we'll just go see that marriage counselor? I'll see a therapist. I'll do whatever you want. I'm sorry too, I said. The problem isn't that I didn't want it. The problem is that you wanted it. I want you to file for divorce. I'll give you some time. In a few months, if you don't file, I will. I don't want anything to do with you, Amanda. Since you're the kind of man who would do what you did, we're done. You thought you could hold children over my head and force me to be a cuckold. You thought you could hold me hostage and do whatever you wanted. Now you've realized you can't do that and you've given up. It's too late, Amanda. File for divorce. You bastard, she exclaimed. You stole all our money. You sold the business, and there's maybe $50,000 left in our bank accounts. Half the money you took was mine. I didn't touch a dime of your money, I told her. I sold the business at a huge loss because I needed to do it fast. I only took the money I made, and guess what? I didn't have a dime left. All of these things were true. They were safely tucked away in an offshore account. I realized I had to do this before the divorce. The records showed that I had sold the business to a Danish company for less than I should have paid in taxes. In addition, I had seriously overpaid the IRS, and they kept that money to offset it against future tax payments. Our brokerage accounts were untouched, and I knew I would have to give half of it away. I set up trusts for the girls, and they were going to sit pretty. For 3 months, I went to every grocery store, Walmart, and convenience store in town. I used my debit card, and every time the machine asked me if I wanted cash, I said yes. $60 to $80 at all these stores, and 3 people did it at every store in town wherever they could. The great thing was that all of these transactions were legal. I had a huge wad of cash in an old trunk in the warehouse. As soon as it was clean, I would start using them. Amanda, you have a house, I told her. We've saved enough money that you can sell it, get out of the mortgage, and live just fine for a while. Maybe after the house is sold, you can move in with Mr. Bill. I wonder how his wife would feel about that. She sighed. I didn't know he was married, she said. No, you didn't care that he was married, I said. You wanted an open marriage. Maybe he has one. It's time to move on, Amanda. File for divorce. It's over between us. I stood up and walked toward the door. She followed me, stretching her arms and crying. She stopped at the door and looked at me. Tell the girls I love them and I'm sorry. Can you do that for me, Corwin? Yes, I'll tell them, I said. I'm not going to give up, she said. I'm not filing for a divorce because I don't want one. I want you to come home where you belong. I wish you'd be a little more open, Corwin, but I can see that's impossible. I never thought it would be like this. I never thought you were serious about not even trying. I still think that if you just tried it, you'd realize you liked it. But now I see that you can't even try. Despite that, I still love you and I will keep trying. I was too tired to argue with her. I walked her out the door, pulled myself together, and called Sebra. She brought the girls home but didn't come over herself. Audra and Olivia were very upset and even angrier at their mother than before, if that was even possible. I knew they wouldn't take the message from Amanda that I had prepared for them, so I decided to just sit with it for a while. 2 days later, Amanda showed up around 4:30 p.m. with dinner. She had made chicken tetrazzini with French string beans and a big basket of garlic bread. Olivia opened the door. Amanda tried to hug her and got a stiff arm in return. Hi, baby, Amanda began. Daddy, called Olivia loudly. You need to come out here. Olivia, her mother began. I'm so sorry, baby. I, I, I love you and I've missed you so much. I just wish... Olivia stopped her. I don't want to hear it, she shouted. Don't do what you did to the ones you love. Stay away from me. She walked away and Amanda nearly fainted. I rescued the basket of food she was carrying and pulled her over to the couch. She sat down and rested her face in her hands. What have I done? She sobbed. They hate me, Corwin. They won't even give me a chance. Well, what you did to them was very hateful, I told her. I doubt they'll ever trust you again, Amanda. Perhaps you can develop some kind of relationship with them. I won't stand in the way of that, but it's all about you, not them or me. I made dinner, she looked at me pleadingly. I felt sorry for her. It was her own fault, but she was hurting. I never liked kicking stray dogs. Let me talk to them, I said. Find some dishes in the kitchen and we'll see what happens. Thanks, Corwin. I need a napkin, she said. I brought her a box and went up to talk to the girls. They were getting worked up. I can't believe she just showed up here, Audra said. Did she think she could feed us and everything would be okay? She ruined our family. I know, kitten, I told her. Here's the thing. She threw a hand grenade and now she has to deal with shrapnel. She still doesn't get it. She still thinks I'm the problem. It's no big deal. I can live with that. I'm not going back to her. I want you to stay with me, but if you want to be with her, that's fine. Nothing will ever change how much I love you two. I'd rather hang myself, Olivia said. We're staying with you, Dad. I hugged them. Do you think we could go out to eat with your mom and be nice to her? I asked. Do you want us to do that? Asked Olivia. Yes, I do, baby, I said. Just don't say mean things to her, okay? Let her know how you feel, but don't be mean. Do you think you can do that? They both agreed, and we had the most awkward dinner ever. Amanda tried to engage the girls in conversation, and they responded, but briefly. We cleaned up, collected Amanda's dishes, and she got ready to leave. Audra, is it okay if I give you a hug? She asked. No, Mom, it's not okay, she replied. I'll talk to you if you want me to, but from now on, you're not my mom anymore. That just destroyed Amanda. It was 30 minutes before she could calm down enough to go home. She was pathetic, and I felt sorry for her, but it wasn't my fault. She continued to come about once a week and eventually reached such an understanding with the girls that they sometimes went to visit with her. She didn't file for divorce and kept urging me to move in with her. 6 months later, I filed. There was a certain dusky volcano of love in my life, and I wanted to see where it would lead. If things didn't go the way I wanted, I needed to move on as a free man. When the divorce was final, I think Amanda finally realized it was over between us. I certainly hoped she had found someone she was happy with. I was sure of it. I was going to ask Moore to marry me. If she didn't agree, I'd have to go to desperate measures. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video. There was a carnival in town, and Dan Klein was going alone. His best friend Mike Nelson had a date with Candy Delaney. Candy was going to invite her sister Shannon to go out with Dan, but at the last minute, Shannon declined and found a friend for the evening. Dan was disappointed by this. He was in love with Shannon and had known her for most of his life. She was very sweet and had an amazing personality. She was that girl, or the alpha girl. She was a walking stereotype. A blonde, curvy-legged cheerleader who didn't act like she was popular or beautiful like she really was. Dan, Mike, and Candy had just graduated from high school and were in the final stages of preparing for college. Candy was going to Northern Illinois and DeKalb, and Dan and Mike were going to the University of Illinois at Chicago. They lived in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, and UIC was a short walk away. NIU was a little farther away, and Candy lived on campus. Shannon was already in college at NIU. She was 2 years older than Candy. At the carnival, Dan looked at the opportunity to get away from Mike and Candy. He didn't want to be a fifth wheel and felt awkward. He couldn't foresee that he would soon get his chance. They were in line for tickets to the ride when Dan saw Shannon running, chased by Steve Rouse. Dan yelled, "Come on!" to Mike, and he ran after them. They ended up behind a tent and out of sight. When he caught up with them, Shannon was lying on the ground holding her ankle and crying. Steve, hunched over, was yelling at her when Dan grabbed him and pulled him back, causing his attacker to fall. Steve got up and threw Dan a punch that landed squarely on his nose. With his nose bleeding, Dan looked around and saw that he was alone. Mike didn't pursue him. Steve and Dan were about the same height, but Steve was more muscular and a few years older. Dan threw a punch that went past his opponent's face and lost his balance. Steve pushed the falling Dan to the muddy ground and then punched him. At that moment, fortunately for Dan, a police officer on a golf cart drove by, forcing Steve to run aside. Shannon crawled over to him and checked to see how badly he was hurt. "Did I win?" asked Dan with a smile, sitting up in the dirt. "No, I'd call it a draw," replied Shannon. "How's your ankle?" "I think it's broken. I can't put any weight on it." Dan stood up and looked around. He saw that they were near a medical tent and said, "Come on, I'll help you to the tent." "Okay." He pulled her up to him, and when she tried to lean on him, she almost fell. He said, We'll do this the easy way, and lifted her up. He walked the 100 or so yards to the medical tent, carrying her easily in his arms. There was a policeman there, dealing with a drunk, and an EMT waiting for something to do. What happened to you? The officer asked. Dan recognized him. It was his parents' friend, Frank Brady. The medic helped her lie down on the table and examined her ankle, while Dan and the policeman talked. Mr. Brady, she was attacked by her companion and hurt her ankle running away from him. I tried to be Mr. White Knight and help her, but I was lucky he got away. How did it all start? The officer asked Shannon. He got mad that I didn't. She paused, not wanting to say the words. It's okay. I need to know, he told her. I said I wouldn't do anything on the Ferris wheel. He was drunk, and he's a mean drunk. When we got off the ride, he pulled me off and said I would do it voluntarily. There was no way I was going to agree, so I hit him and ran away. I fell behind the tents, and then Dan came out of nowhere as Steve yelled at me. That's what I thought, too. I pulled him back and he pounced on me. Dan added. Who is this guy? Steve Rouse, she said. Okay. Since you were hurt, I have to file a report. You'll both need to testify. How bad is it, Johnny? I don't think it's broken, but it still needs to be x-rayed. It's pretty swollen, so we need to ice it first. Okay, check on Lancelot and make sure his nose isn't broken. Shannon was taken to the hospital by ambulance while Dan was checked out. He texted Candy to come to the med tent to tell her what had happened so she could call her parents. He was on his way out of the tent when Mike and Candy approached him from the direction of the parking lot. What happened? Asked Candy. Your sister tried to run away from her date and I intervened. Long story short, she's on her way to the hospital right now with an injured ankle, and her jerk of a date got away. Jesus, Mike said. Yeah, asshole. I told you to come when I ran after her. What the hell happened? I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. Yeah, but I'm just as bad. I was lucky. He was going to stomp me to death. I need to go to the hospital. My folks will meet me there. Can you drive me? Asked Candy, ending the conversation. Yeah, sure, replied Mike, and took her hand as they walked to his car. I'll see you guys later, Dan said as he left. A couple weeks later, Dan and Mike were sitting by Dan's pool, and Dan asked, How's Candy doing? Nothing. We went out a few times, but it didn't work out as a couple. I see. Well, she's leaving for school soon anyway. Yeah, her dad rented an apartment there for her and Shannon. They've probably already left by now. Ah, Dan said regretfully. He never got a chance to find out how Shannon was doing. Since Steve hadn't hit her, he got off with a slap on the wrist for fighting with Dan. Steve was going to Alabama for school and came back early. Dan was glad. He didn't want a rematch. The school year passed without incident, and over Christmas break, Dan ran into Candy at the mall. Hey, Candy, how's it going? Good. Just shopping for last-minute gifts. How about you? Same. How's school? Challenging, but good. Shannon is a big help. We're both in accounting, so she can help me with my classes, since she's already taken them. That's good. How is she feeling? How's the ankle? Fine, it's all healed. Is she in town? He asked hopefully. No, she got back together with a guy she dated in high school and went home with him for the vacations. Oh, Dan said sadly, and Candy noticed it. Dan, so you want to have lunch? Yeah, sure. How about Maggiano's? Sounds good. I'll drive. Next chapter. You like my sister, don't you? Said Candy as they waited for a table. I guess so, he replied, embarrassed. She's older than us. You don't stand a chance with her, you know that. I never considered that possibility. Anyway, I'm here with you, not her. She smiled when he said that. Dan continued. When are you coming back? The 7th. Classes won't start for a while, but I'd like to get settled in already. Sure, makes sense. You know it's only a little over an hour's drive from here. Dan was interested in that unsolicited comment of hers. Had she really taken an interest in him and said it wasn't that far to go out during the school year? Yeah, do you even come home on weekends? I would come if I had a reason, she replied with a smile as the buzzer alerted them that their table was ready. They had a wonderful time over their meal, chatting easily and without awkwardness. Dan had a crush on her, and he could tell she was very flirtatious with him. Dan insisted on paying for lunch, and as he was paying, he asked her, "Would you like to go to the movies tomorrow night?" She thought for a bit and replied, "I have a date with Mike, sorry. It's more to have something to do. We didn't really bond when we went out over the summer. I'll cancel and we can go." "No, don't do that. We can do it another time," he said. He didn't want to get into a love triangle with his friend and Candy. He decided he needed to talk to Mike because there had to be some interest if he was going to go out with her again. When she dropped him off at his car, he said goodbye and kissed her on the cheek. She said, "Please call me, Dan. I'd like to see you again." "Sure, I'll see you." Next chapter. "Dude, are you seeing Candy again?" asked Dan to his friend. "Yeah, she's great." "Yeah, but you said you two weren't getting back together." "We won't have to get back together if I can get between her legs. I almost did that last time, but my parents came home and interrupted us. She went to school after that." "How did you even find that out?" "I ran into her at the mall. We had lunch and I asked her out for tomorrow. She told me she was dating you." "I didn't know you were interested. It's just one date. After it, you can claim her. I'm not falling in love or anything." "Whatever. Just pumping it out and throwing it away, right?" "Hey man, if she's ready and willing, so can I." Next chapter. Dan went to the movies with his little sister Angie and a few of her friends. While waiting for the show to start, he saw Mike and Candy sitting 2 rows in front of them. Angie asked, "What's the matter, bro? Do you like this girl?" "What?" "You look sad and stare at Mike's companion." "Kind of like her. I asked her out tonight, but she already had a date with him. She said she wasn't crazy about him and wanted to break things off, but I told her not to." "That was stupid," she said, as Mike and Candy started kissing. "She seemed a little interested," Angie said. "Yeah, I guess so." The movie was good, but Mike and Candy didn't know it. They kissed throughout the whole session. When the movie was over and they got up to leave, Candy noticed Dan looking at her. She frowned and had the decency to look embarrassed, but didn't say anything. Mike noticed him, and behind Candy's back showed him a thumbs up. Angie said, "Well, at least you have an advantage over him tonight." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You have 3 hot girls with you, and he only has her." The other girls giggled at that. Dan laughed and said, "As great as that sounds, sis, a foursome with 16-year-olds is not my thing." One of her friends replied, "Too bad." They all laughed as they left. Dan didn't call Candy for the rest of their break. He didn't want to get between her and Mike, especially after Mike told him that he and her were fine, and he was going to keep seeing her for the rest of the vacation. The day Candy was about to go back to school, she called him. "Dan, why didn't you call me?" "Well, first of all, you lied to me about the extent of your interest in Mike." "No." "The way you played hockey with him in the movie suggests that you did." "Of course, what you did in the car, what you did when you got back to his house says you did it." "That bastard told you all this?" "Yes. He knew I was interested in asking you out. I think he told me that as a warning to either stay out of it or stay away from people who put themselves out there when they're not interested in a guy. I'm glad he did, especially since you saw him the whole break. That's a lot for someone you haven't bonded with." "Dan, it's—" She tried to speak, but Dan interrupted her. "No, you don't have to explain. We weren't dating. You were free to date whoever you wanted." "Dan, I really like you. Why don't we go out sometime? It's not at all what you think." "No, it's not what I think. I like you too, but you either lied to me about your feelings for Mike or you're too fast for me, if you know what I mean." "Are you saying I'm a slut?" "Not at all. I just don't need a nick on the pole. I don't do casual hookups." She snorted, holding back tears. "Look, I've got to go. Have a safe trip to school. Tell Shannon I said hi." She ended the conversation without saying anything. Dan regretted the conversation. He knew he shouldn't have said what he said, but her acrimony had hit a nerve. The next day, he received a text from a number that wasn't saved in his contacts. "My sister is an idiot, Lancelot." He realized it could only be Shannon and replied, "No, she's just not the right sister." He regretted sending that message as soon as he hit the send button. He didn't need Shannon to know he liked her as long as she was dating someone. Her reply was a simple frown emoji. Next chapter. Dan and Mike were having lunch at the mall during spring break when Shannon and Candy approached them. Mike didn't have time to react before Candy hit him with such force that she seemed to break his arm. "You lying bastard. Did you tell him we were having fun? You knew he liked me, you piece of shit. You even lied to him about seeing me at recess. I had one date with you, asshole." Dan was shocked. He saw Shannon behind her nod as if her words were true. He looked at Mike, who hadn't uttered a word. "Mike?" said Dan. "Look, I wanted her to have a fair chance. I knew you wouldn't have messed with her if you thought she was an easy target. I told you that so I'd have a chance before you got together with her." "Dude, you're my best friend. Why would you do this to me?" "Screw it. Yeah, I'm your friend. That's bros before bitches, dude. I figured you'd just find someone else. It's not like she's going to marry one of us." "God, you're an asshole," Candy said, turned and walked away. Shannon said, "Call her, Dan. You still have a chance. She likes you. That's all I hear about at school." "Okay." "Dude, I need to get you out of my sight. I want to kill you right now," Dan said, getting up and walking away. Mike only shook his head in bewilderment. Dan called Candy but got her voicemail. He left a message. "I'm sorry I was so rude to you the last time we talked. Why didn't you tell me he lied to me? I guess you thought I would believe my best friend over you. Anyway, call me." She didn't call, but Shannon texted him a week after they went back to school. "Don't give up on her. She still talks about you a lot." Dan texted back. "Is she dating at school?" "No." "Okay, thanks." Over the next few weeks, Dan called her several more times, but she never returned his calls. One Saturday morning, he decided to drive down to DeKalb and see her. "What's your address?" wrote Dan Shannon. "I want to send her some flowers." "Oh, I hope that works." And she sent the address. He found the apartment easily and saw her car parked on the street. He bought flowers and a soft toy for her and hoped she would talk to him. Shannon was studying and Candy was making lunch when the doorbell rang. "Who could it be?" asked Candy. Shannon, assuming it was flowers, replied, "It's probably for you." Candy opened the door and saw Dan with the flowers. "Dan, what are you doing here?" Shannon looked up and smiled. "I'll leave you two alone." Dan said, "May I come in?" She took the flowers and the bear and said, "Okay, over there." She pointed to the kitchen. He sat down while she made a salad. He had hoped for a warmer welcome, but at least she let him in. "Candy," he began, "why won't you return my calls? Even if you just want to tell me to back off and leave you alone." "I don't know. I'm really mad at you for calling me a slut, especially when I had nothing going on with him." "I was harsh, but I didn't call you a slut. I just meant that I'm not looking for anything casual. If we're dating, I want it to be a long-term proposition, not a short fling for a breakup." That sucks, Dan, because I really thought we were right for each other." "I did too. That's why I'm trying now." "Yeah, why? I haven't shown any interest." "Well, your sister is working on me behind your back. She told me to keep trying." She laughed and said, "I can't even seem to trust my own sister." "How about we go to a movie on Friday? I'd really like to take you out." "Okay, you win. But are you sure you want a long-distance relationship?" she said, smiling. "It's only an hour away. I think you're worth it." Before she could answer, Shannon walked in. "So you two are finally dating?" "Yeah. Thanks for telling him not to give up." "Hey, I'm just tired of you crying on my shoulder for him." "Bitch," said Candy. And they started dating and things went well for a few months. During summer vacation, they spent most days together when they weren't working. One Friday, they were supposed to go to a movie, but Candy insisted on driving. Hey, Nick! He saw her driving in the opposite direction from the movie theater and asked, "Where are we going?" "To see a movie." "Where to?" "To my apartment." "Why?" "Because my sister is at my parents' right now, and I want to escalate our relationship." He smiled and said, "I like the way you think." When they entered her apartment, she didn't pretend there was a movie going on. She immediately pulled him into her bedroom. Next chapter. Life continued for the next few years. They dated and eventually got engaged, planning to get married. Shannon married her boyfriend the summer before Dan and Candy's senior year. They settled in the same town where they grew up. Dan and Mike remained best friends. After their rift, they were a little tense, but they got through it. Candy even warmed up to him after a while, which surprised Dan, but Mike would be the best man at Dan's wedding. A week after graduation, Dan and Candy moved in together. They both got jobs in their hometown and moved into an apartment a mile away from Shannon and her husband Aaron. On a dreary Tuesday evening, the door buzzer went off in their apartment. Dan pushed the intercom button. "Who is it?" he said. "It's Shannon. Help me, please." Without answering, he ran out of the apartment and down the stairs. "Shannon, oh my God," he said, as he opened the downstairs door and saw her bleeding lip and swollen cheek as she held onto his left arm. She collapsed into his arms and sobbed uncontrollably. Candy walked over and took her in her arms. "What the hell happened, sis?" "I caught him cheating and tried to kick him out. He just laughed at me and I started punching him in the chest. He tried to stop me from hitting him and pushed me away, but I lost my balance and fell down the stairs." Candy held her for a few minutes and then said, "We need to get you to the emergency room. Your arm looks like it's broken." "It wasn't his fault. I hit him." "Okay, we'll take care of that later. Dan, please take the car. Dan, where is he?" "He was here a minute ago," Shannon said through tears. "Shit. I wish he hadn't gone to your house." "Lancelot, no," Shannon whispered to herself when Candy said, "Wait here, I'll get the keys." "I'm going to destroy that bastard," Dan said to himself as he drove the short distance to Shannon's house. He stopped and ran to the door. He didn't bother knocking or ringing. The door was unlocked, so he opened it and entered the house. "Good to have you back, bitch," shouted a voice from upstairs. Dan silently walked up the stairs, hoping for the unexpected. But he was out of luck. "Oh, it's you. What the hell do you want? A little princess showing up on your doorstep ranting lies?" "She fell down. I didn't hit her." Dan didn't say a word. He walked into the bedroom and punched Aaron as hard as he could. If this had been a movie, Aaron would have been knocked out. Unfortunately for Dan, it wasn't like that in real life. Dan stood up and kicked him in the back, remembering how it had incapacitated him in his fight with Steve. Ironic, he thought, realizing that the only fights he'd been in had been over Shannon. Candy ran into the room and yelled at Dan to stop. Dan, shocked by his wife's appearance, turned and saw that she was crying. "He's not worth it. Don't get yourself in trouble for him," she said. "Screw you, bitch. You didn't tell me I wasn't worth it when we were having fun last night," said Aaron. "No," she screamed. "He's lying, baby. Don't listen to him." "Oh yeah, slut. Here, man. See for yourself," Aaron said, holding out the phone to Dan. Candy tried to grab the phone, but Dan managed to keep her from doing so in stunned silence. She fell to the floor in tears, saying, "No, don't. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Shannon walked in and asked, "What's going on?" Still holding her hand. "Let's get you to the ambulance. We'll figure it out on the way," Dan said. "No, baby, don't go. Wait," Candy cried. Dan ignored her and helped Shannon out of the house. Next chapter. "Dan, tell me what was going on in there," Shannon said. "Your husband told me he entertained Candy last night. I was working late and went out for a drink, so I don't know if she was home or not. Tonight, I found someone else's underwear under the bed. That's how I caught it. I don't know if it was her or not. I was at my mom and dad's. He gave me his phone and said there was proof. I haven't looked at it yet. I'm scared. What if it's true? He said, and started crying. I love her so much. Let's just wait until we get you fixed up. Then we'll go through the phone together. Okay. Next chapter. Dan held the phone in his hand, waiting for news about Shannon. He tried to open the phone, but it was password protected. A nurse came out and called his name. You can come back, she said. When he stood up, he saw Candy running toward the exit. He shook his head and followed the nurse. Looks like you lost the fight, Dan Shannon said as he walked over to her bed. How many stairs did you hit your face on? He smiled, making her chuckle slightly. Her arm was in a sling, and there were several bruises on her face. They said it's broken. I'm getting x-rays tonight, and they'll probably put a cast on it tomorrow. Have you looked at the phone? I just can't believe she could have done that. He must have been lying. It's protected by a code. I couldn't get in. Try 117711. He typed, I'm in. He went to the Messages app and looked through the messages first. He saw a recent chain with the initial CD. He decided it was Candy and opened the conversation. There were only 4 messages. Dan assumed he deleted them regularly. CD, he won't be home after work. Aaron, she's gone to your parents' house. CD, I'm leaving. Be ready. Aaron, I'm always ready. Tears began to fall as he read the line. To your parents. It could only be her. He clicked on the CD icon to see the contact information. It was Candy's number. He handed the phone to Shannon and sat down, deep in thought. Shannon started flipping through his pictures and found several videos of Aaron doing it. It looked like they were 2 different women, but one of them was definitely Candy. Damn, there's this video, she said, texting herself and Dan. There are 4 of them, but only one with Candy. I don't know this other woman. She cried, how could she do this to us? To my sister? To my husband? I don't know. I'm sorry, Shannon. I never suspected anything. This is so sudden. I'm shocked. She never gave me any reason to think she was cheating on me. If it was just one time, would you have been able to stay with her? Honestly, if it was someone other than your husband, maybe. Betrayal toward you is unforgivable. She hung up the phone and reached for his hand. I love you, Lancelot. I love you too. But why did you call me Lancelot? That time you chased me when Steve was chasing me, remember? He nodded. In the tent, the policeman called you Lancelot when you said you were trying to become a white knight. You always turn up when I need you. You are my knight in shining armor, my Lancelot. Laughing, Dan said, I forgot about that. Lady Guinevere, would you like me to call your family? Yes. I'll have to stay with them when they let me out of here. Good. I'll call them. While he was on the phone, the police showed up to talk to Shannon. It's the hospital's custom to call them if spouse or child abuse is suspected. It's up to the patient to decide if they want to talk to them. Dan went out into the lobby to make the call. He managed to get into an area where Candy couldn't see him, but he could see her if he peeked around the corner. She was crying, sitting alone in the corner watching the main door to the emergency room. He still couldn't believe she'd done this to him. To his own sister. His shock passed and was replaced by anger. He called her parents and said, Hi, it's Dan. Hi, Dan. What's up? Shannon got into a fight with Aaron and is in the emergency room right now. What? Her father yelled. Is she okay? She fell down the stairs when he pushed her. She has severe bruises and a broken arm. She's in emergency room 112A. I'm going to kill that bastard. I took a few hits when I saw him. Look, it's much worse than that. How the hell could it be worse? Was he having an affair with Candy? What, with my Candy? Yeah, the bastard took a video and gave it to me. Jesus, where is she? In the emergency room. They were told not to let her in. Okay, we're on our way. Okay, I'll stay with Shannon until you get here. She's talking to the cops right now. I don't know if she'll press charges or not, but before she knew it was Candy, she said it wasn't his fault. Now that she knows exactly who it is, she might take offense at him and press charges. Frankly, I'd send his ass to jail. I agree, Dan. I'll see you soon. Dan walked past the police officers on his way back to the room. They stopped him and asked if he knew or had seen anything. He told them no, and they moved on. He didn't want them to know about his fight with Aaron. Hey, your parents are on their way. Are you okay? Yeah. They'll be here soon to take me to x-rays. How did the meeting with the police go? I told them everything. That he pushed me away so I wouldn't hit him and I fell. They're going to arrest him. Good. He was too smug about the whole thing. How could I have been so wrong about him, Dan? Don't worry about it. I'm going to divorce him. Good. You deserve better. She answered nothing and smiled falsely. As the orderly led her out, Dan returned to the waiting area. Peeking around the corner, he saw Candy and her parents discussing something animatedly. Dan pulled his cell phone out of his pocket and sent Candy the video Aaron had taken. He watched as a text notification came to her phone. She opened it and saw her screaming. She sat down on the nearest chair and dropped her phone. Her mom picked it up and looked to see what was written on it. She dropped the phone in Candy's lap and stepped away from her, shaking her head. She saw Dan peeking out from around the corner and grabbed her husband. They walked toward Dan's house and turned the corner, making sure Candy couldn't see. What a mess, Dan. We're so sorry, her father said. I'm canceling the wedding. I can't marry a woman who first of all cheated on me and secondly betrayed her family. That's just crazy. Has she told you why? Not yet. I haven't returned any of her calls. She said it was all lies until you sent her the video. Right. Lying until your last breath. How's Candy? She's in the x-ray right now. I'm going to get out of here while Candy's still sitting there. I'm going to grab a few things I need and head over to my parents' house. That's a good idea. Best to avoid her until you calm down and come to your senses. Dan entered the apartment and felt a wave of sadness wash over him. He packed his bag, ignoring the phone ringing again and again. He saw a stack of wedding invitations and tore one of them to pieces. Those pieces were left on her pillow. Candy sat in the reception area and pondered how things had gotten so messed up. Why had Aaron written them down? Why hadn't he told her? Why had he given the tape to Dan? Why had she been so stupid in the first place? Just then she saw a policewoman appear from around the corner. She walked up to her and asked, "Officer, is it a crime to record a video without telling me about it?" Well, I guess it depends on what they do with the video. Revenge laws make it illegal to put the video online or share it on social media. There are also laws against blackmail and things like that. What happened? The man I was having fun with recorded it on his phone without my knowledge. He gave the phone to my fiancé to watch it. Illinois has not yet passed a law that applies in this case. You should contact an attorney to see if you can file a civil suit against him. I'm really sorry about that. I hope it all gets resolved. Sincerely, said the officer as she walked away. Next chapter. Candy saw the doors open and her parents walk out with Shannon. She stood up and walked over to them, but her father said, "Haven't you done enough? Just leave her alone." "But Dad, please." "Don't make a scene, Candy. Just go home." "Where's Dan?" "He left an hour ago." "What? Damn it, he should be home," she said, and ran to her car to go home. As her parents turned onto Shannon Street, they saw a police car drive past them with Aaron in it. Shannon shook her head sadly, thinking about how her life had turned out. They gathered a bag of her clothes, and Shannon picked up the red underwear that had been the cause of the breakup of her marriage, and then her relationship with her sister. "Mom, these are Candy's underwear. Could you make sure she gets them? I want them out of my house." "Don't be rude. Just throw them away." Next chapter. Candy ran into her apartment and yelled for Dan. She ran from room to room, finding them all empty, and finally ended up in her bedroom. She sat down on her bed and cried. After a few minutes, she put her head down on her pillow and found the tattered invitation there. She sobbed even harder and called out to Dan again, but he didn't answer. The next day, Dan realized that he hadn't finished watching the video. Shannon confirmed that it was Candy, but Dan had to see for himself. At first, he decided to look for pictures to see if there were any signs that it was more than one time. There were pictures of women, but it wasn't Candy. He found pictures of Shannon, but walked out, not wanting to invade her privacy. He went back to the video and pressed play. He saw Aaron say he got a text from Shannon and put the phone down on the nightstand. Dan realized that Candy probably didn't know she was being recorded, and that was Aaron's excuse for handling the phone when they connected. They barely spoke at all. It was over in 10 minutes. When it was over, Candy asked, "So, are you satisfied now?" "Yes." "If Dan or Shannon finds out, I don't know what I'll do to you." "Easy, honey. There's no need for that. I'm not going to ruin my marriage by giving you away. It's our secret." "He better not find out about Mike either." "I told you I won't tell him. You kept your end of the bargain. I'll keep mine. You just have to be careful if you're going to mess with him. Walking into a motel in broad daylight is a bad idea." "I'm done either way. I'm not cheating when I get married." "You got a shitty idea of right and wrong, honey." "No. Once I take wedding vows, I'm committed. I didn't make any vows when we started dating or when we got engaged." "Wow, girl. If you don't think what you're doing is wrong, why do you have to do it with me for me to hide it?" "He doesn't need to know. That's all that matters. For now." Then the video stopped and Aaron smiled into the camera. Dan threw the phone at the wall and screamed, "Damn it!" His mom ran in and asked, "What, honey? Is everything okay?" "No. Just found out she cheated on me with Mike, too." "Oh, Dan, I'm so sorry." "Yeah, me too, Mom. Me too." Next chapter. Dan continued to ignore Candy's calls. He needed to deal with Mike, and he didn't want him to blab. He could only hope Candy hadn't watched all the videos and found out he was in on it. Dan texted Mike, "Meet me for a drink tonight, bro? I want to talk about the bachelor party." "Yeah. Bill at 7 o'clock? Great. Bill's Pub is a bar in a shopping center with a parking lot on the side of the building. It was the perfect place for a robbery." Dan called his high school friend Javi and told him about the favor debt. One day during sophomore year, Javi and Dan were together and saw Javi's girlfriend making out with another guy. Javi beat the crap out of him, and his girlfriend ran away and called the police. Dan told the cops that the first punch was thrown by the other guy, who bullied Javi by throwing other insults about him stealing his girlfriend. In the end, Javi only got off with a fine and a few hours of community service. This was less than the other guy who was considered the instigator. Javi always thought Dan had kept him out of juvie and promised to pay him back someday. That day had come. Dan was sitting in the parking lot and saw Mike pull up. As soon as Mike got out of the car, he was grabbed by one of the two masked men waiting for him. The second guy grabbed Mike's wallet and punched him several times in the stomach. The attackers ran away and Dan got busy with Mike. "Are you okay? What the hell was that?" "They took my wallet." "Shit. Do you need an ambulance?" "No, just call the police." Dan called the police and they filed the necessary robbery report. Next chapter. Dan finally got tired of Candy's calls and answered the phone late at night. "Hello?" "Dan, baby, it's not what you think." He interrupted her and said, "How long have you been having fun with Mike?" "Dan, no, that's crazy." "Look at the video. We're done. I'll take my shit and you can keep your apartment." "No. Dan, wait," she said as the connection broke. Candy grimaced as she watched the video when she saw that their post-coital conversation was there as well. She burst into tears again. And then she realized that she had proof that he had blackmailed her with his words. "Let's see what the cops think of this," she said to the empty room. Next chapter. Dan went to the Delaney house to check on Shannon. Her mom let him in and gave him a hug. She apologized for Candy's actions and thanked him for helping Shannon again. He made his way to Shannon's old bedroom, where she was lying on the bed looking up at the ceiling. He noticed the fresh cast on her arm and said, "Can I be the first one to sign it?" She jumped up and hugged him, sobbing against his chest. "Why, Dan? How could she do this to us?" "I watched all the videos today. They talk about it. He blackmailed her. He caught her at the motel with Mike." "Mike? Oh my God." "Yeah, I just can't understand it. They've been having fun with each other since the beginning? That show at the mall where she gave him a stupid slap in the face was an act? I just don't know what to think." "Did you talk to her?" "Not for long. Long enough for her to lie to me and for me to tell her it was over between us." "What are you going to do, Shannon?" "Now that I'm done with the doctors for a while, I'm going to see a divorce lawyer. The cheating was enough on its own, but hearing that he was blackmailing her was too much. This despite the fact that he pushed me down the stairs. I can't believe I blamed myself for it at first." "That's okay. He'll get what he deserves now. Did you hear Mike got mugged outside Bill's tonight?" "No, well, screw him for messing with Candy. Karma can be a bitch." He smiled and agreed. "What's next for you, Dan?" "Obviously, we're done. I'm sorry about your parents because they put up part of the wedding deposit. We're not getting them back. I think I'll move back home and hit the reset button on my life." "Stay in touch, Dan. We can be a support for each other. I know I'll definitely need it." "Sure. I'm sure I'll need a shoulder to cry on, too. God, so much wasted time and wasted love. Thank God we're not married yet. I'm sorry I ever told you to keep trying with her." "That's okay. I always stopped short anyway. My first choice was made." Her eyes lit up and she smiled at the remark. He gave her another hug and went downstairs. Her parents were talking in the kitchen when he walked in. "Mr. and Mrs. Delaney, I'm so sorry about the wedding. I'll pay you back for the deposits you made." "That's it then? The final decision?" "Yes. Turns out she had an affair with my best friend as well." Her mom started crying and her dad said, "Don't worry about the money. She'll pay us back. She was a whore." "Gary!" snapped the mom. "I'm just calling a spade a spade. If she'd kept her legs closed, we wouldn't be having this conversation." "Take care. You are wonderful people. I've been very blessed to be a part of your family these past few years." A tear rolled down his cheek as he hugged them goodbye. "You never know what the future holds, Dan." "We'll see, Mrs. Delaney. Take care." A week later, Dan went to his old apartment to pick up his things. After waiting for Candy to leave for work, he packed and loaded everything into the borrowed van. He closed the door and got up to look around. It made him sad to think of what had been lost. The love, the lust, the children they wouldn't have. All of it hurt him deeply. He left the key on the kitchen table and closed the door for good. As he was driving back to his parents' house, he got a call from Mike. They hadn't spoken since that night at Bill's. "What?" he shouted into the speakerphone. "Dan, listen, it was all a lie. I never had anything with Candy." "Are you a goddamn idiot or just plain stupid? She was being blackmailed because you got caught. She freaking admitted it on video." "I'm sorry, man. I don't know what to say other than I'm sorry." "For how long?" "What?" "How long have you been entertaining her?" "A little over 2 months. The first time was at Camden's party. You passed out and we played Truth or Dare." "Truth or Dare?" "We were all drunk." "Bastard, why did you keep going?" "It wasn't a regular thing and she always called me when she wanted to." "You were my best friend, asshole. How could you do that to me?" "I've always wanted her, and you know it. I finally got my chance, and she was great. How could I say no?" "Listen to me carefully. The next time I see you, you're going to wish those guys who robbed you hadn't killed you. You're a dead man walking, and when I see you, know if I do, when I do, they won't recognize your corpse." He didn't give him a chance to answer and ended the conversation. He chided himself for dramatizing the situation so dramatically. He knew he wasn't a fighter, and he hadn't won the last couple he'd been in, so it was an empty threat. He hoped it would be enough to keep him at a distance. Next chapter. Candy was devastated that her family cut off all contact with her. She eventually transferred to an office in Milwaukee and hoped that someday they would forgive her. She knew Dan never would. The betrayal had hit him too deeply. Aaron bailed out but left Shannon alone, partly because of the restraining order and partly because he wanted to get rid of the compulsive bitch, as he called her. He ended up pleading guilty to both the battery charge for pushing Shannon and the blackmail charge. His lawyer tried to get him off the blackmail charge, but since it was recorded on his phone and he voluntarily gave it to Dan, the judge allowed the recording to be used. He got 6 months for battery and 1 year for blackmail. His attorney negotiated the battery as best as he could. Shannon's written statement implied that her fall was completely accidental. However, the push that caused it was not accidental. So he didn't completely get off. And then he moved back to his hometown when he was released after 12 months for good behavior. Shannon never saw or heard from him again. Dan met with Shannon every Saturday over coffee and tea. It was a strictly platonic relationship, just two broken hearts hiding together in plain sight. 6 weeks later, she canceled one Saturday morning. She called, but left a voicemail. In the message, she cried and said she wasn't feeling well. Dan didn't return the call. He drove to her house where she was living again after Aaron moved in. A knock on the door brought her out of her resting state on the couch. There were used tissues on it, and she was wearing an old, tattered robe. She looked out the window, saw it was Dan, and gasped. There was no way she would let him see her in this state. She screamed, "Please go away, I'm fine." He shook his head and muttered, "No." She burst into tears and asked, "Please?" He shook his head again. She gave up and opened the door. He walked in and seeing the state the house was in, he hugged her. "What happened? I was supposed to be your shoulder, remember?" "I'm pregnant." "Oh, shit." "Yeah, damn shit. Come on in, let's bring you back down to earth. I'll make you some tea." He went to the kitchen and brought her a capsule of green tea. She had a Keurig coffee maker that she used to make tea. It was easier than heating a teapot. He set the tea down for her and began gathering up the napkins and throwing them in the trash can. Once settled, he sat down next to her and put his arms around her and pulled her close to him. She cried and sobbed in his arms for 10 minutes in silence. Finally, she spoke. "I'm almost 3 months along. Because of the stress, I didn't realize I missed my period." "Who's the father?" joked Dan, for which he received a slap on the arm. "An asshole, of course. I'm not a cheater." "Of course you're not." "What am I supposed to do, Dan? I'm totally screwed. I'll be divorced in a few months and my baby will be born nameless. I've already decided I'm never going to let Aaron know about the baby after what he did, and I'm scared to death. I don't want him in my life at all." "The first thing you're going to do is take a shower. Once you've refreshed your body, I'll take you to the cafe we've been going to every week for the last month or so. This isn't the end of the world for you. It's the beginning. You're going to have a baby. A beautiful little piece of you to be molded and shaped into a future president or doctor. I envy you so much. I won't be able to raise a child on my own. Shannon, you are a beautiful woman. There's someone out there waiting for you, I'm sure of it." "Ha! Easy for you to say," she said, getting up to go to the shower. She heard him quietly say to himself, "Wrong, sister," as she went upstairs. While she showered, he cleaned up her house a bit. He cleaned up the mess in the living room and loaded the dishwasher from the sink full of dishes. When she came downstairs, she saw him wiping down the counters. "Why are you cleaning my house?" "Huh? I'm not cleaning. I'm putting things in order." "Never mind, let's go." Sitting in the cafe, he ordered black coffee for himself and tea with non-fat milk for her. She smiled, for he always remembered her order. "What?" he asked, looking at her smiling face. "How nice of you to remember my order. We've been doing this for a while now." "I know, but if you didn't care, you wouldn't pay attention to little things like that." "Of course I care. How many punches in the face do I have to get before you realize that?" She turned away and wiped away a tear. I'm sorry, she said. I'm just hormonal. You're pregnant. I guess I should get used to this being the new normal. Let's change the subject from hormones. Have you told your parents yet? No, it scares me too. You know you have to do this before you show your face, right? I know, I don't think they'll be mad. They want to be grandparents very badly. They've just been under a lot of stress lately. Both of their daughters' marriages broke up. Well, at least it hasn't happened to yours yet. Do you want me to come with you? Maybe I can take my mind off my emotions? I can't ask you to do that. It's not your problem. You didn't ask for it. I suggested it, and it's not a problem. You're my best friend right now. I'm not going to let you go through this alone. Best friend? She said, raising an eyebrow. He nodded and said, Yes, don't forget that. Next chapter. Shannon knocked nervously on her parents' door, hoping no one would answer. She frowned when her father opened the door. He said, Hey guys, come on in. Hi, Daddy. Oh shit, I'm only Daddy when things are bad. Meg, Shannon and Dan are here. She called me Daddy. What's wrong? Asked Mrs. Delaney lightly, half jokingly. Let's sit down, okay? Okay, Pumpkin, what's wrong? Her father asked. I'm pregnant. What, Dan? For crying out loud? Couldn't you have gotten married first? Said her father. Dan was shocked, and Shannon replied, Dad, I wish I could. Dan's head spun so fast his vision blurred. It's Aaron! I've never kissed Dan, let alone slept with him, she finished. Oh, I'm sorry, Pumpkin. You two are so close we thought you were dating, her father said sullenly. No, sir. We're just helping each other through our problems as friends. After all, she's still a married woman. Jesus, is that really all that's holding you back? Dan, the papers are filed. It's all over but the tears. And Lord knows she's had plenty of those. Dan sat with his mouth open. He couldn't find the words to answer, so her father continued. Dan, she's in love with you. We can all see that. Hell, we thought you two were already a couple. Dan, her mom continued, I can see the love in your eyes when you look at her. Dan took Shannon's hand and said, You didn't want me when we were younger. I didn't think you felt that way. What? Said Shannon. I've loved you from afar for years. Yeah, when we were in middle school and high school it didn't work out. But after I turned 18 and graduated, I thought I had a chance. Candy even tried to help. But when you talked me out of going to the carnival with Steve, I decided you didn't care about me that much. I was devastated. She told me later that I didn't have a chance because you were older. You got back together with your high school boyfriend. Oh, Dan. She told me Mike's friend needed a date. She didn't tell me it was you. I probably would have said yes, even though you were a couple years younger. You were cute, and I knew you were a good guy. God, after you saved me from Steve, I was so embarrassed that I just ran back to school. By the way, that guy's name was Aaron. He convinced me to give him another chance. Looks like our lives are full of wasted time, said Dan, leaning over and kissing her. Well, that's settled, her father said. Now about my future grandchild. How far along are you? Almost 3 months. We need to prepare your home. We need to set up the nursery, child protection, and shopping. Oh boy, we'll be shopping, her mom said cheerfully. Dan, if you guys are going where you appear to be headed, can you handle her having a child with another man? Her father asked. Shannon flinched and said, Dad. No, that's a valid question. I certainly haven't had time to think about it, but I don't see it being a problem, especially since you don't want Aaron involved in her life. That gave the impetus for action. Shannon cried tears of joy for the first time in months. I love you, Dan. He kissed her again and said, Sweetheart, I love you even more. Her mom clapped her hands and said, Let's start planning. A few weeks passed, and although they saw each other several times a week and talked on the phone every day, Dan realized they had never gone on a real date. He immediately sent flowers to her office and printed on a card. Would you like to see a movie on Friday? At 3 o'clock, he received a text. I was wondering if you would ever ask me out on a date. He responded as stupidly as a man had never responded to a woman before. I had to work up the